So thank you for the introduction, Joyce. I have to laugh. I didn't realize it had been 16 years. I haven't heard anyone quite say that back to me. So it's funny to hear that back. Yes, I've been working in the sector for a long time. So I'd like to thank everyone for being here today for this session on how to format your nonprofit's website copy, and I've designed this to be a beginner level session. Joyce was very kind in introducing me, and I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on where I'm coming from, and that will help you understand why I'm presenting this topic. So as I just realized, I've been in the sector for 16 years. I started in 1999, actually working at a truly grassroots level. I was the only person in the office, and I did everything from volunteer development to fund development to signing the lease, and of course communications as well. Spent a couple of years there, and then I spent 6 years as the national communications manager for a large health organization. And in 2008, when I've had my fill of that role, I decided to launch my own business and stick with the sector. So it's been since 2008 that I've been consulting to nonprofits, and my focus is on writing copy for my clients and helping them to plan their communications. And so my company name is Moflow. I also created the nonprofit MarCommunity blog, which Joyce mentioned, and that was almost 2 years ago. It launched April 30th, 2013. And that was my response to seeing that people working inside nonprofits were really willing to help each other by sharing their knowledge and their case studies and their experiences. So if you don't already know about Nonprofit MarCommunity, I do suggest you go over and have a look, because it is primarily a guest contributor-based blog, and we talk about absolutely everything under MarCom. You can find articles on media relations, on Google AdWords, everything digital and offline communications as well. And I am also the creator of an online course, all focused on writing better nonprofit website copy. And I'm going to touch on that a couple of times later today, so I won't say anything more about that right now. So to kick off our session together, I've told you a little bit about where I'm coming from with this content. And I'd like to know where you're coming from. What is your web writing experience? What brought you here today? So I'm going to go in and open up a poll. Just bear with me for a moment. And I don't see my polls. I don't know why they're not showing up. Please bear with me. Joyce, is there anything happening where I shouldn't?
That's okay. I've launched the poll for you, and you can let me know.
See the polls.
When, so.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
No problem. About 13%, 15% are voting.
Okay, so my questions, I'm asking you to find out, to tell us, how would you describe your web writing experience? You'll see the options up there, and I don't know, Joyce, why I don't see them, but maybe I'll ask you to do the next two polls for me when we get there. But what best describes your experience? Have you never written a website copy before, so that's why you're interested in this content? Do you write web copy once in a while, or do you write it frequently, but you never really spent time or had the opportunity to learn about formatting? So maybe just give it a couple more seconds, and then we'll see what we come up with.
We have about 70% of our membership, of our attendees voted, 81%. We'll give it maybe a minute, just a couple more seconds, okay. And then we'll close the webinar, close the poll, not the webinar. My apologies. So I have shared the poll results. We have 41% saying I write website copy once in a while. 46% say I write web copy frequently but never learned how to format. And 14% never written website copy before.
Interesting. Okay. Great. So that's really helpful for me to know where you're coming from, and maybe for you to feel good, when you see that your peers are writing web copy and are also in the same boat. They're feeling like there's a gap in learning about formatting. So thank you for sharing that. All right. And Joyce, is the poll closed up now?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to what we're going to cover in today's session. So I'm going to share along the way some information about why formatting copy specifically for online publication is important and why it's different. I'm going to talk about some mistakes that even experienced nonprofit communicators are making. And I'm going to go over 7 editing and formatting tweaks throughout the presentation. And when we get to the end, I'm going to offer some information for those of you who kind of want to take this learning to the next level, and we'll wrap up with our questions and answers. So whenever I'm developing training or thinking about presenting content, I'd like to see if a theme emerges. And when I was first pulling this content together, the theme that emerged about formatting for the web was that writing for online publication actually isn't complicated, and in many ways it's easier. So especially if you come from a background of writing for print, my takeaway for you is that this is actually an opportunity to take it easy. And as we go through, I'm going to show you what I mean. I also wanted to spend a moment to tell you why I'm focusing on formatting, why I think that formatting is an important thing to talk about. First of all, as I mentioned, I work directly with nonprofit clients, and I write the copy for them. But in the last couple of years, I've been doing more teaching, more blogging, more training, in order to offer more options beyond the direct work I do with my clients. And I mentioned in my course, Write Better Nonprofit Websites, when I was developing the copy for that course and the content for that course, as I always do, I went out and asked people for their top questions. And here, I'll give you a glimpse of some of the questions I got about writing website copy. So people want to know, first and foremost, how to format your copy. So there's your answer right there. That's the top question I've been getting. People also want to know how to attract people and search engines to your content. I'm getting asked about where to start. How do you even start? What's the starting point for planning and writing website content? And how to write content that gets visitors to take action on your website. So today we're going to focus on obviously the first question, but we'll touch a lot on that second point too, about how to attract people and search engines to your content. Now there's another reason why I think this content is important. So I mentioned the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog, and I mentioned the fact that we've got really experienced communicators working from the sector, contributing the content, and that they're experienced in all aspects of nonprofit MarCom, but they might be a little bit less experienced when it comes to writing for the web. Over the course of the history of nonprofit MarCommunity, which started late April 2013, we have published over 180 posts. And I review all of them, and most of them are written by guest authors. So you can imagine I've reviewed a lot of content in the last less than 2 years. And what I see is that these very experienced folks are still making mistakes when it comes to writing for the web, and they need and they often ask me for help with writing for the web. So I often get a submission with the request, can you please make this web friendly? So clearly on two different fronts, I'm seeing a need for some basic editing and basic formatting help. So let's get to it. Joyce, I've got another poll if you don't mind launching that for me. And my question is, and actually I see it now. So would you like me to manage the polls myself, Joyce?
Yes, if that's
okay. I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, here we go. So if you wouldn't mind, have a look at the poll and tell me, it's just your best estimate. Do you think that the average reader is looking at 5%, 20%, 40%, or 65% of the copy on a given web page? The answers are rolling in, so I'll just give it a minute or two. Most people have voted already. A moment or two, not a minute or two. Oh, this is a very skeptical group, I see, based on the answers that are coming in. Okay, great. Give it just a moment to see if anyone else wants to vote before I close it. Okay, and let's have a look. So you're really a very skeptical bunch. It looks like we've got 40% of people thinking only 5% and 52% of people thinking that only 20% of the copy is getting written. No one seems to be in favor of a real thorough reading of a web page. So let me move on to the answer to that question. You're right. So according to web usability expert Jacob Nielsen, the average visitor reads about 20% of the text on a web page. So those who picked 20% got it right. And another little tidbit from Nielsen Norman Group. Users often leave a web page in 10 to 20 seconds. In 10 to 20 seconds. So what that means for us it's our job to help them know very, very quickly what's important and to help them determine, hopefully decide in favor of staying on our page and reading a little more than that 20% or spending more than those 10 seconds. And so to that end, there are a few formatting considerations that I'm presenting today that are going to make your content more web-friendly in terms of the user, and that will also help it get indexed by search engines. Now, whenever I get to this point, I'd like to just make a note, a little disclaimer that a lot of folks are curious about search engine optimization, and search engine optimization, or SEO, it really includes a lot more than what you write on the page. It likely involves the help of someone with technical expertise if that's not you. And I'm not going to go there today. We're doing a beginner level session, and what I'm going to focus on is keeping it simple and sharing some tips to help you optimize your copy. So just making sure that the copy itself is, attractive to search engines. There are a few on-page, what are known as on-page elements that can affect the search engine optimization of your content. So I'm going to just mention them quickly right now. Your title, which should be short and include keywords, and I'm going to break this down throughout the webinar. Your meta description. So this will involve a little bit of tech and something called meta description tags. But if you don't have the access or the tech skills to designate your meta description, what happens is a search engine or, say, a social network, when they pull in your link, they scrape content from your page, and often that's the first page that appears on the page, sorry. So we're going to look at our introductory paragraphs throughout this session as our default for today. Search engines look at your content, and here they want it to be unique. They want it to be on topic and relevant, useful to your audience. And it should include keywords, the next point, and those should be used appropriately, and I'll elaborate on that. And your copy should include links. It should link to other relevant content and show that it's part of this World Wide Web of content. Okay, so I've gone over a couple things. I've given you my disclaimer on SEO, and I'll just reiterate that we're working at a beginner level today, so our focus is on our audience. And that my advice is that the most important thing to remember in order to protect the quality of your copy is to keep search engines in mind, but always write for your audience, write for people first. So I'm going to jump into our do's and don'ts now. My first don't for today is don't slave away at an essay-style opus. Don't try to write a really long work of art, a masterpiece in length. Instead, keep your content brief. So my advice here is the best way to approach length is to use words efficiently. Use the words, sentences, and paragraphs you need to communicate your message, but use only what you need. And because some people like to have a rule of thumb, a more specific rule of thumb here are a few. Use short, clear sentences. And if you like to have a little bit of a framework here, try aiming for 10 to 15 words at the absolute max. Same thing with paragraphs. Use short, clear paragraphs. And in this case, aim for 1 to 5 sentence paragraphs. I'll mention this a couple of times, but yes, a 1-sentence paragraph is okay when writing for the web. And then when you're thinking about your overall page length, you're going to hear some recommendations to stay between 200 to 400 words per page. And I do agree, I think that will work nicely for many pages, especially when you're thinking about, your static web content, things like your about page and program descriptions, things like that. However, sometimes you simply need more space to cover your topic and to make your content useful. And I'm thinking really about blog posts in this case, where I will go far, far over this guideline. I'll go up to 1,500 words. Okay, I want to share some great examples with you throughout this webinar. So here's the post. It's a blog post from Imagine Canada. It was posted in the last couple of, there you go, January 20th. And what I like about this, and I'm sorry, there's the URL at the bottom of the page if you want to have a closer look at this post itself. But it's really nice and concise. It's 575 words long, and that's great sort of for any blog post, but what I really liked about this is that it's a message from the President and CEO of Imagine Canada, and rarely do we see really concise writing from the leadership. I don't know if you would agree, but that's what I feel. You're going to see here a couple of very short sentences. You're also going to see a couple of one-sentence paragraphs or two-sentence paragraphs, and the language is simply clear and accessible. And Tierney has shared the link directly to the post in the chat if you want to go over and have a look. So when I'm thinking about this point about formatting, the takeaway is to take it easy. Grammar rules can be broken or even relaxed, and when it comes to keeping content brief, we're allowed to use short sentences, and we're even allowed to use sentence fragments. You can write one-sentence paragraphs on the web. So it makes it a little bit easier as a writer that you can just get to the point. Okay, let's move to my next don't. Don't waste your time crafting long, drawn-out, or flowery preambles. Instead, use an inverted pyramid structure for your writing. So when I'm talking about the inverted pyramid structure, it's all about getting to the point quickly. It's about structuring your content as an inverted pyramid with the most information first, including some keywords. So instead of having your sort of summary and your main point at the end after you've kind of built your case, make your point first and then elaborate on it. And I mentioned having some keywords in there right away, but again, make sure it's readable. Don't overstuff with keywords. Just use enough of them to help search engines find your content, just enough to indicate what the content is going to be about. If you're writing with your audience in mind, you'll naturally include words and phrases that are relevant to them. And we're not talking about the writing process today, but it's worth sort of pausing there for a minute to really emphasize that. If we were doing a writing workshop, absolutely we would be spending as much time as we possibly could to really analyze our audience and think about their information needs and put them at the forefront of our minds. So we're literally thinking of them as we write. And then things like keywords will fall in naturally. Okay, now I did want to show some examples of don'ts, and I don't believe in picking on nonprofits. I'm here to help nonprofits. So I'm using myself as an example of some before and after copy. So here is an article that's on my blog now, but what I did is, this originally appeared over on the Nonprofit MarCommunity. I wrote it a long time ago, and I thought I'd go back and really scrutinize it and see how I could have improved my formatting. So the revised version of this post is over at Moflow.ca /blog, and you've got the link in your chat. And to find this post quickly, just go into the search box and type in donate page, and you should find this article. You can access that after if you want to see kind of the overall improved copy, but I'm going to dissect it right now for you. So when I originally wrote this article, here was my introductory paragraph. When was the last time you updated the volunteer and donate page of your or section of your nonprofit website? When were these pages written in the first place and by whom? If getting website visitors to support your organization is a priority, good copywriting of this content is critical. So you can see that I'm not sure what I was thinking. I was trying to get into the reader's mind a little bit, but I was trying to pique their curiosity too much, and I didn't get straight to the point of what this article was going to be about. So when I recently revised this paragraph, it's a one-sentence paragraph now, one-sentence intro that reads, if getting website visitors to support your organization is a priority, good copywriting of your volunteer and donate page is critical. And I'm going to mention this again later, but what I did is I realized I really hadn't optimized this page for a particular search term, and it's donate page that I'm using now. So I took that punctuation away from the quotes away from donate so that it would be more easily indexed by search engines. Okay, let's look at a real example from a nonprofit. This is from ABC Life Literacy Canada. It's basically a program or event description for their Family Literacy Day. And what I like about this copy is that it gets straight to the point. So I'll just read that out to you in case you can't see it on the slide and you're not popping over, but the link is in the chat. Family Literacy Day is a national awareness initiative created by ABC Life Literacy Canada in 1999 and held annually on January 27th to raise awareness of the importance of reading and engaging in other literacy-related activities as a family. So really what happened here right away is that they mention what Family Literacy Day is, when it's held, and what it's for. What they could have done, and I'm glad they didn't, but what a lot of folks would do is start to talk about literacy or family literacy and then get to the information about Family Literacy Day. But they did their inverted pyramid. They got straight to the point, and then they're going to build and explain. Okay, so The take it easy takeaway for this point is that it takes the pressure off. When you just get straight to the point with that inverted pyramid, you don't have to worry about setting the stage and creating the scene and warming your reader up to what you're going to talk about. They want you to just tell them what they can expect on that page. All right, my next don't write long, uninterrupted blocks of copy. So I am going to show you a few examples, real examples that I found, but I've taken away the branding and hopefully your eagle eyes aren't too quick for me. But what I have here is a program description, an about page, and a blog post, all from nonprofits. And you can see what I mean by long, uninterrupted blocks of copy. So I'm going to step away from those examples, and before I get into my do here, I'd like to talk to you about something called the F pattern. What you're looking at on this slide is called an eye tracking visualization heat map. And what it is showing is that it's showing where readers' eyes go on a page when they're looking at a page of web copy, and that they read in an F-shaped pattern. So the dominant reading pattern, now hopefully you can see it, like you can see an F on each of these pages. And what you have here on the left is an about page, in the middle is a program description, and on the right are search engine results, search results. So you're going to see that users are reading first in a horizontal movement, usually across the upper part of the content area. Then the dominant pattern is that they're going to move down the page a little bit and read across in a second horizontal movement, and that's usually shorter than the first. And then finally, users are going to scan the content down the left side in a vertical movement. The implications of this F pattern for us is it really underscores the importance of following guidelines for writing for the web and not repurposing print content. So I've done it. I'm guessing I'm not the only one here on the webinar who has, in a pinch, taken something from a print piece, maybe a brochure or an annual report, and thrown it into their website. And it's not great, and it really should at least be reformatted for a few reasons. What you're going to find is that because of this F pattern, what you're seeing is that users aren't reading the text thoroughly. They're not reading it in a word-by-word manner as they would if they were sitting down with a magazine or your annual report. Yes, some people might, but most are not going to. The first two paragraphs have to have the most important information. Readers are probably going to read more in the first paragraph than in the second, so you've got to be informative and clear there. And this also tells us that we've got to start subheadings, paragraphs, and bullets with information-carrying words. We've got to have words there down the left side that users are going to notice when they're scanning the left side of your content in the final stem of their F pattern. And we know they're going to be less likely to look at the third word than the first, so that's why a really informative word ideally shows up on the left-hand side. Okay, so having that in mind, my next do is break up your copy with subheadings, and connected with that one is use bullets and lists to break up your copy. So these are two easy ways to really, think back to that slide where I showed you the long uninterrupted blocks of copy, and you can use your subheadings and your bullets to break it up. So when you're breaking up your copy with bullets and lists, it's all about looking for opportunities. You're going to look for longer sentences and paragraphs that can be broken up into bullets, into bullet form. And this is a good one to keep in mind going forward when you're writing, not just when you've got a completed piece of copy that you're formatting. As you're writing, pay attention to lists that are a part of paragraphs that can become lists, and that, again, will make copywriting a little bit easier. Let's look at before and after copy from my post that I mentioned. So this is a paragraph from within the post that originally read, "It's work, but this kind of planning helps you to prevent or overcome copywriting roadblocks such as writing under time pressure, not having enough background information or direction, and not being able to properly guide supporters as they attempt to follow through and take action." So you can see how those 3 points in the after, you can see how easy it was to just turn them into bullets. And for good measure, while I was looking at that paragraph, I realized I could have put in a subheading to introduce it. That paragraph is about the importance of planning. So I put planning as the first word in that subheading. So you can see that little makeover I did. I've got a couple of examples from real nonprofits for you. So here's a post, or sorry, this is a page that Pathways to Education uses to communicate the results of their work. The copy is nicely broken up with subheadings and bullets, and they actually also used bold to make scanning easier. And another example from Matrix. This is their page where they describe their grants. They know people are coming in and are going to be scanning quickly for this kind of information. So they've put the reader questions into the subheadings, and they've nicely used bullets to make it easy to find what you're looking for. So the take it easy takeaway for this one, for this point, is that you don't have to smooth absolutely everything together when you're writing for the web. I come from a background of doing a lot of editorial writing as well as marketing writing, and if you're in the same boat, you know, you're familiar with trying to very gracefully introduce the next paragraph and weave your content together. But when you're writing for the web, it's easier for all of us, your reader and yourself, to throw in a subheading that simply takes them to the next topic. All right, I'm ready for my next don't. Don't be clever, cute, or use puns in your titles, headings, and subheadings. Don't force readers to wonder what the following section might be about. I see this surprisingly often. Instead, use meaningful page titles, headings, and subheadings. Make them meaningful. So what does this mean? Think of your headings more as descriptions as opposed to, you know, kind of advertising copy or like an active creative writing. Just think of them as descriptions. Make your headings helpful. Use them to tell the reader what to expect on the page or the section or the paragraph that follows the heading. Use your main heading to describe what the page is about, and if possible, again, use the most important words at the start. And then use subheadings to break up sections of a page. Have one subheading for every 2 or 3 paragraphs, and make sure that they're clear and that they're short and well structured. And sorry, I didn't advance that. And also, I would say, you know, I often have one subheading for one paragraph, but at least every 2 to 3 paragraphs, break up your copy with a subheading. Let's look at an example of a really poor main heading or a title for a blog post. Now, I really wanted to show you kind of the type of thing I see once in a while, but I didn't actually write this as my heading. If you don't know what you want website visitors to take away, how will they know? So this is the heading kind of written to get people curious and interested, but it's just not clear enough. So I actually used the secret to writing a better volunteer or donate page. And that could be improved further if I could get that donate page earlier in the heading, because I identified that that's my key phrase. So I really struggled actually with finding some great examples from nonprofits who use very descriptive subheadings in particular. But our host had the best example I found. So here is a blog post from TechSoup Canada from the last couple of weeks, and the post title is 5 Nonprofit Tech Trends for 2015. And then you can see the next couple of headings. So in case you can't see it clearly right now, subheading 1 is Coding Becoming Common Knowledge. Subheading 2 is More Interest in Hybrid Cloud Models. And then there's a few more that aren't on that page, but you can use the link that Tierney has shared to see them. I'll read them out if you want to stay where you are. So the third heading, subheading, was More Emphasis on Your True Owned Media. Your fourth one was Advanced Data Analytics. And the fifth one was Beacon-Based Technology. So I know I ran through that pretty quickly, but basically what's important is that here's what I know is in each section. Coding, hybrid cloud models, owned media, data analytics, and beacon-based technology. I know exactly what each paragraph is going to be about, and that's what is so awesome about these subheadings. All right, let's look at our next don't. Don't think that you can trick Google and the other search engines with keyword stuffing. So keyword stuffing is the practice of cramming a keyword into your copy many times to trick search engines into indexing your page for that subject. So in other words, to trick the search engine for having your content show up in the search results. It doesn't work, and actually Google's algorithm changes so often and really at this point favors quality content, relevant content, useful and frequently updated content. So don't do it because it doesn't work, and also from a writing point of view, obviously it makes for really bad, awkward writing. I don't know if you've ever landed on a page where someone has tried to do this keyword stuffing, but it makes the content unreadable, and really it's our readers that matter. So instead, do use keywords and key phrases, but do so thoughtfully. What does this mean? Well, what you can do is you can be thoughtful about the words and phrases that you include in your copy. Try to use words in your headings and in your content, especially in your opening paragraph, that people would type into a search engine when looking for your page. So remember I commented that, we really want to try to get into the minds of our readers. And when you're writing for your audience and you're super tuned into their information needs, then this is going to come more naturally for you. Also, make sure that your opening paragraph provides clear and accurate page descriptions, because this is the information that will be displayed in search results. And just to reiterate that, remember that we're always writing for our audience, not for search engines. So don't overdo this. Don't overstuff your copy. All right, another do. There's not really a don't for this. I just think it's something you might take advantage of that not everyone is taking advantage of. Do use bold or italics to add emphasis as appropriate, because bold and italics help your readers to zero in on what's important. And make sure to use them sparingly, but do use them once in a while. So I'm just going to return to that Pathways to Education example we looked at earlier. And the reason is, I mentioned it earlier, you can see in the lower half of the copy, they have used bold, and it does make scanning that copy quite a bit easier. From my own example, I've brought together a few of the updates and upgrades that I did throughout the session into one spot here. So here now you can see my optimized title with my key phrase in it, my shortened first paragraph also with the key phrase in it, a nice concise second paragraph, repeated the key phrase one more time. I probably would ease off after that in the copy, and then I chose to use italics to highlight the word inspire, because that's what we want to do with our donate page copy or even our volunteer copy. We want to inspire them to support us. So I just try to draw attention to that. And if you think about what I mentioned early on, when I'm thinking about my audience being nonprofits who want help with writing, I mentioned to you that people are asking how to inspire through their copy. So I know that's a good word to highlight. Okay, next don't is don't say click here. If you're guilty of this, it's time to stop saying click here, because truthfully, users are familiar at this point with what a link is, what it looks like, and what's going to happen when they click it. So stop saying click here and instead include links and use them wisely. I mentioned earlier that it's important to include links in your copy, so make sure you're doing that because it can help both your readers and search engines. And there are two types of links that you should include. You should include inbound links and outbound links. I'm going to explain both of those in a moment. I'm just going to mention a few things about all links. For both types of links, inbound and outbound, you should be writing anchor text, and that's the text that appears in your links. You should be writing anchor text that clearly indicates what visitors will get if they click. Because of the way the links are usually formatted, they usually stand out, or they really should. They should stand out on the page. So use meaningful descriptive language in those links. This is yet another way to help your visitors, as they're scanning the page, to figure out what that copy is going to be all about. And then think about using phrases that people would type in a search engine, again. And if you can, it depends on the length of the link, use the most important word or words at the beginning of the link. That applies more if it's a bit of a longer bit of text in your link. Okay, let's look at inbound or internal links. What these are links to related content on your site, and they're great because they keep visitors on your site. This is an additional option or an alternative to your site navigation. It's another way of telling people what else you have to offer on your website. And they're very useful because internal links can help you drive visitors to pages that support fulfillment of your communications objectives and your organization's objectives. You can use internal links to move them along the path to taking action. Also, internal links tell search engines what your site is all about if you're using the anchor text in an informative way. And then there are the outbound or external links. So external links point to an external domain or to another website, basically. And some people are hesitant to do this because they don't want to send visitors away from your site, but really these are credibility helpers. When you have external links in your copy, they should be sending visitors to information that supports what you've already been telling them. So it's a way of backing up your position and adding to your credibility. Also important to remember is when you share additional information with them, you're making your own content more useful to your reader. And as with internal links, keywords in your links help your search engine optimization. So I kind of backward engineered this copy to show a poor example that uses the words "click here." I originally had 2 sentences. Separately and for each audience, drill down into who your potential supporters are as much as possible. Click here for information about creating marketing personas. And when I rewrote that to put those important keywords, creating marketing personas, because I know my audience wants to learn about creating marketing personas, when I put that into the link, first of all, I made my anchor text more meaningful and more useful to search engines, but I also managed to make my copy more concise, because click here was an awkward interruption to my copy. I have an example from the Furniture Bank and a blog post that they have written. Here, the blog post is called "How Your Furniture Donation Helps Tackle Poverty and Homelessness." And I highlighted this post because the first 3 links that you'll see are, the words in the first 3 links are recently published report, so that when you click that link, you're going to a recently published report, the Toronto Enterprise Fund, so you'll go straight to that partner and learn more about that organization, and very importantly for them, furniture donation. They've put furniture donation into the link so people can learn more about that topic, which is obviously super relevant. So the take it easy takeaway here is that you don't have to work awkward instructions into your copy. You know, when you saw my example, I had to stop and start a new sentence in order to say "click here," and that's just not great writing and reading. So it actually takes a step away if you just naturally embed your links. Okay, so I'm going to go over what we've talked about today very quickly, and I'm hoping that as you think on what we've covered, I'm hoping that you'll see that writing for the web it doesn't have to be intimidating, and there's some easy things you can do to start making your copy web friendly. And I'd like to know from you, are you going to go back to your website copy or tackle new projects with this tool belt of tips? So before I ask you to answer that question, I'm going to just go over a recap of what we did today. So today we've talked about keeping your content brief. We talked about writing using an inverted pyramid structure, or because we're talking about formatting, editing and reformatting it into an inverted pyramid structure. We talked about using subheadings, bullets, and lists to break up your copy. We also talked about using meaningful page titles, headings, and subheadings. About using bold or italics to add emphasis as appropriate. About using keywords and key phrases. And about including links and using them wisely. So if you're already doing some of this, then you might just be adding a tip or two, to what you're doing. But if it's all new to you, and it is a beginner level session, so in case this is all or mostly new to you, then it might feel like we covered quite a bit. So I'm hoping right now that you're going to find a place to start. So I have a question for you. Which of these web copy formatting tips will you use right away? I'm going to open up a poll so you can share your thoughts. So, which tip will you commit to using right away? And I've narrowed this down to a few that I think you should prioritize on. For example, you won't see the bold or italics in this list. Are you going to focus on keeping your content brief? Are you going to focus on using meaningful page titles, headings, and subheadings? Are you going to focus on using bullets and lists to break up your copy? Will it be including keywords and key phrases and doing so thoughtfully? Or is it going to be including links more, or including links at all, and using them wisely? So the votes are coming in. I'm just going to leave open this opportunity to weigh in on your favorite tip that you're going to take away. Looks like almost everyone has voted. Cool. Okay. I'm going to close up the poll, so if you want to quickly vote and you haven't, go ahead. Awesome. A couple more coming in, so I'll just pause for a second. Wow, it looks like if I just wait a minute, we're going to get everyone voting, so I might just wait a bit longer. Okay, great. Let's have a look. Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. You are probably seeing more than you wanted to see of my screen. Here we go. Okay, so we are seeing a lot of people focusing on keeping content brief. That's awesome. And meaningful page title headings and subheadings. Great, so that's going to go a long way. So let me move back to this poll slide. Okay. So my challenge for you, now that you've voted and you've thought about what's resonating most with you, is to take the point you selected in that poll, write it down now so you don't forget, and treat this as your top takeaway from this webinar. Start using that one tip. Just start using that one tip in all of your editing and formatting that you do. And then it will start to become second nature, and you'll be able to add in the next one and the next one. Like for me, I am unable to read copy without thinking how it could have been put into bullets. And I just see subheadings, a need for subheadings all over the place. So you'll start to have that come more naturally for you. Okay, now I told you I was going to tell you a little bit more about opportunities to take this learning to the next level, including a giveaway that I'm running right now. So let me move into that very briefly. As I mentioned, I have a course called Write Better Nonprofit Website, and it's got more of this type of content in a step-by-step format. So this course is for you if some of the following apply. If you're someone who's been meaning to get around to writing or updating your nonprofit's web content, but you don't know where to start, and that's a common concern I hear. If you're concerned that you need help with writing copy that inspires action and that resonates with the right audiences for your organization, or if you're simply in need of a solid framework or a process to follow, that you would like the guidance of a step-by-step process. So Write Better Nonprofit Website is a course that breaks down the web writing process into 12 video modules. You can see on the side I've got an examples of a few of the module names. And the modules guide you through my step-by-step system for getting the work done. You can learn more about the course at writebetternonprofitwebsites.com. But before you head over there, I want you to be aware that I'm giving away 2 free course registrations right now. I'm running a giveaway right now. So to enter this contest, this giveaway contest, it's going to be based on a random draw. To enter, you need to tell me, over on this page you'll find a widget where you can tell me your answer to, other than finding time to write it, what is your #1 challenge when it comes to writing nonprofit website copy? And then once you've answered the question, you can actually improve your chances of winning the course registration by sharing, tweeting, and basically spreading the word about the contest. You can submit multiple entries until February 23rd, midnight Eastern Standard Time. And then I'm going to announce the winners that, like I said, will be randomly selected. I'll make the announcement on February 25th. So if the course looks interesting to you or you think you might want it, please go ahead and enter the giveaway. And then good luck. So that's all I have for you for now until we start answering some questions.
All right, thank you so much again, Marlene, for taking us through at least some of the tips on how to write better for the web. We have actually a few questions around some of the beginning content that you covered, specifically for the F pattern. So the first question from our audience is the F pattern applicable to web reading only?
Yes. So that's an aggregate of, it's the result of a huge study by Nielsen Norman Group. And their entire focus is on reading, on website usability, website accessibility, and patterns in web use. So yes, that study is based on website visitors.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying. The second follow-up question for the F pattern is, does the F pattern of I've movement suggest that pictures are better placed on the right side of the text rather than the left?
Oh, good question. You know what? That's a really good question. I'm a little bit stumped by that because, you know, the pictures can play two roles. They keep people interested. They add interest and add story to what you're saying, but at the same time, you know, we're focusing on putting language on the left-hand side because that will inform people more specifically. So I guess what I've just done is answered it in my opinion, which is I would be keeping images over to the right so that you could put all the information carrying content on the left as much as possible. Do you have a difference of opinion on that, Joyce?
I I think it depends on what the image is. Like if it's an informative image as opposed to just like an eye-catching image, I do agree with you, Marlene, that they can play a role in getting your eye to kind of move around the screen. So if it's not a very informative, like an infographic or a graph to kind of illustrate your point, I tend to put it on the right because I'm hoping that it would take people move their eyes across the screen. But again, that's my personal opinion. I don't have any data to back that up with.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And as you said, something like an infographic, you know, the F pattern is telling us how people are scanning. So you make a good point about kind of getting them to stay a little longer and look a little more closely. But at the same time, if it's really informative and it's going to tell people what to expect on the rest of the page, just from the reader's point of view, then yes, something like an infographic left aligned would work very well.
Now, we have a third question actually that follows in the same pattern, so I might as well group them all together. How does the F pattern influence the placement of vertical menus?
Oh. Okay, so we're getting into you know, website design, and I'm going to say I'm going to opt out of answering that because I'm not a web designer, and my focus is on the page. Once you're on a page, what to do with your copy. But maybe we can follow up with either I can have someone field that question, or we can follow up with some resources.
Oh, that's fair enough. And it's not a direct answer to that question, but the best way you can actually do some A/B testing on your website to just see where people are navigating themselves towards. So if that's something that you're curious on whether it affects your vertical menus, you can also do that. So into more content related, sorry, let me just pull up. One of the next question is right here. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm trying to find it. Okay, so the next question is, one of our goals is to lengthen the amount of time website visitors stay with us. What are some of the ways to use content to keep visitors around for longer without interrupting their workflow?
Repeat the last part of that. Lengthen it with?
Lengthen it with the use of content to keep the visitors around for longer without interrupting their workflow.
Do you know what is meant by interrupting the workflow?
I'm assuming it means maybe they're reading without interrupting their reading.
I mean, most of what I taught today is all about keeping them around longer because you've got the visual cues, or you're using your content. If you have informative subheadings and they have done their scan and know that the content lower down in the page that they haven't got to yet holds value for them or holds interest for them, then you're winning. You're going to keep them longer. So that's why some of the points around subheadings or bullets, where folks can really see those information carrying words over to the left-hand side of the bullet. I think that the best thing overall, this is really just repeating a principle that I mentioned, is make it easy to scan the whole page and know at first glance that it's content that is going to have value for them right to the end.
Okay, that's really great advice. Our next question is about your advice about the click here for links, because most users get the idea by now. So the question is, some websites or some nonprofits, their main audience are elderly users who may not be as used to contemporary computing or technology or digital literacy as the same speed as we do. Is there a case for the click here being the main link as a good way to highlight or suggest content, or do you know if there's research into that?
You know, I haven't researched this specifically, but I know, without looking into it, I've seen enough conversation about the fact that, you mentioned how long I've been in the nonprofit sector. The World Wide Web has been around even longer. So I think a lot of our assumptions about older users are not actually as accurate as we would think. And that's good news that, tech-savvy seniors are more and more and more common. That being said, an alternative, instead of putting click here into your body copy, that's where you can start to use things like a button or graphic elements that do have a call to action written right on them, and therefore guide people. So, you could have a button that if it's really critical for you, that's the action people take on a page, that could say, learn more about this. Well, you'd want to be even more specific, but learn more about our day program for children, and have that in a button. But to just get rid of the click here in your body copy.
Okay, perfect. So we have a few minutes, so I'm going to try to cram as many questions as I can. The next one is, if a page has a lot of content to cover, do you recommend breaking it out into multiple pages, or just chunk out the content as much as possible with subheadings?
My route would be subheadings. Again, people are used to scrolling. They know we're more used to the web and how it works, so they know if there's more content to come that they will just have to simply scroll down for it. I'm seeing less and less of the, click here for the next page. What about you, Joyce? I know you guys have been writing about kind of trends. Are you seeing that as a trend that goes away in terms of next page in the bottom of the page navigation?
That's actually a good question. It's from what I've seen, because the current trend right now is infinite scrolling for certain content types. And what I found is that's really good for really timely news articles. But if you have something that is very informative, like a research paper or something, having content that is more stagnant, like static on one page, so people know where to go back to. So it's not the best question, but it really depends on the content and what your goal is. Like, do you want to be informative, or do you want to be timely and engaging?
And you're making me think about the fact that, it depends whether we're talking about something like a press release, a news announcement, a blog post, or copy that, static copy that lives and stays on your website, and in which case you're going to start to revert back to the guideline I mentioned about 200 to 400 words. Like if you've got 1,000 words of static copy and it's not an article, it's description of some kind, or it's an invitation to get involved, then you should probably be thinking about how that can live in more than one place.
That's very on point. So for the last question of this webinar sessions, and if we haven't gotten to your question, there is an opportunity that you can let us know whether you want us to reach out to Marlene on your behalf after the webinar. So for the last question of the webinar, it's how important is it to have links open in new windows as opposed to opening in the same window?
I love this question because we recently answered it on the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog, and I'm going to be sharing information on behalf of someone else here because I'm not a web usability expert, but we just had one of our guest authors, Mike Mella, write an article. If you head over to Nonprofit MarCommunity, he wrote a post on basically how to make sure your website is usable, and his advice is not to open in a new tab. And he acknowledges the worry that people don't want visitors to leave your website. But his argument is, again, it comes down to what we're used to doing on the web, and we're used to having the choice, depending on whether you're on PC or Mac, one way or another you can choose to click and just have the default action of opening in a new tab happen, or to stay on page. Awesome, Tierney just shared the link. And that taking away that choice is poor usability and poor design for your users. So I'm answering that really well, but it's completely not my expertise, it's someone else's. So do have a look at that post, and when you're in that post that Tierney shared, Mike included a link back to his blog where he really just focused on this one topic, the answer to that question.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We're out of time, but I want to thank you, everyone, for joining us again today. Thank you, Marlene, for taking your time to share with us your expertise. If you're if for the attendees, if you're interested, the webinar is being recorded, and we will send out the link once it's available online. The slides and all the URLs and resources, we have copies of that, so you will see that in a follow-up email. In the meantime, if your questions have not been answered, again, please fill out the webinar post-webinar survey that will show up once you leave the webinar, and you can indicate to us whether you want Marlene to follow up with you, or you can kind of put in additional comments there. So again, thank you again for joining us during your lunch hour, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye for now.